I, as a cybersecurity advisor, if we at CISA learn about activity that your organization may not know about, like you're being targeted or you had a data breach and you don't know it, then I will contact you. I or somebody else, we will get a hold of you and let you know. One of the reasons I want to get the word out about CISA is that if you don't know who I am and I call you up and I'm like, hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Oh, and by the way, you're about to be hacked, but I can't send you an email. We don't want to let the bad guys know. So give me your personal email address. That's kind of a rough cold call to make.
Welcome to the CMMC Proof Podcast. I'm your host, Darius Phillips, a certified CMMC assessor and provisional instructor. Today, we have the honor of Jim Hofleen joining us. He is a cybersecurity advisor for CISA, and he is a veteran of the Air Force, retired 23 years doing IT communications. And also, he served in NATO as well. So he's going to tell us a lot of hopefully cool stories and give us some insight into the global cybersecurity world. Welcome, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing great, Derek, and thanks for inviting me onto your podcast. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm coming to you from Elkhorn, Iowa, a beautiful little town halfway between Council Bluffs and Des Moines, just a little bit north of the interstate. Beautiful, small, rural community.
So this time of year, do y'all get a lot of snow?
We didn't get all that much. We got a couple of big chunks, but the main thing is it's been cold. It's warm now but it's Iowa, so you kind of get what you get.
You take it as it comes. I can completely understand. Now, are you originally from Iowa?
No, sir. I actually grew up on a small farm in North Dakota, raised cattle, raised grain. But as the youngest of 6 kids on the farm, I knew it just wasn't for me. So I ended up heading off to the Air Force.
So did you work harder on the farm or in the Air Force?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. It was definitely physically harder in the farm, but the Air Force gave me a challenge and gave me the opportunity to do good things for a lot of people. So that's kind of what I like to do, is try to help people out. And the Air Force gave me that opportunity.
Clearly, you have a heart for service. You're still serving today for CISA. When you're not protecting critical assets for CISA, what do you do for fun?
My wife and I raised a lot of kids. That pretty much took care of all that in the meantime. But now we're trying to get back to a little more simpler lifestyle. My wife is very much into growing things, herbs and vegetables, and I've got 5 gallons of meat fermenting in my closet. So we're just chilling out a little bit more and trying to get back to a more simple lifestyle.
Oh, nothing wrong with that. What kind of meat?
Oh, chickens, rabbits, beef, pork.
Cool. A nice variety. All right. So I kind of brushed over your extensive cybersecurity experience. Can you give us a little more detail about how you got started in information security and in your current role now? What do you do?
Okay. Well, when I first joined the Air Force, I signed up back in 1983. So yes, I've been around a while.
That's the year I was born.
Oh my God. When I first joined the Air Force, I was a transportation specialist, which meant I actually did airline tickets for the Air Force.
Okay.
But then after a series of events, I ended up cross-training into computer programming. So the Air Force trained me as a computer programmer. I used to do assembly language programming with 4-bit assembler. But then the Morrissey internet worm hit back in 1988, and I got pulled into the Strategic Air Command Advisory Council because I was a programmer to just figure out how we were going to deal with the Morrissey worm. And then Titan Ring kicked off in the early 2000s, and I ended up doing some defensive operations against the Chinese government at that time. So cybersecurity has always been a part of my life. As an IT person, as a programmer, as a sysadmin, as a network admin, as a systems engineer. And after I got out of the military, went to work for Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, cybersecurity was always there, but it was always part of just part of a stack of things you have to do as an IT manager. You have to worry about cybersecurity, true, but you also have to worry about personnel. You have to worry about budgets. You have to worry about facilities and HVAC and power and life cycle
Right.
replacements and a lot of things. Cybersecurity's always been there for me. It's always been something I've been interested in from a technical and a professional point of view, but it's always just been part of the stack of the responsibilities that I've had up until I joined
Right.
CISA. So now cybersecurity is pretty much the main thing that I do, is helping people get better at cybersecurity. That's my entire job. That's my only job, is to help organizations and individuals get better, get more resilient, which is what we're trying to push here at CISA.
That's pretty awesome. So when you say help people get more resilient, can you tell us more about CISA's mission? Who are they primarily focused on, their stakeholders?
Well, our stakeholders is the entire United States government and the entire
Okay.
United States. We run the .gov domain,
Wow.
for example. Okay, so we do a
Okay.
lot of work at the very high level with federal agencies all over. We also know that organizations throughout the country have a need to be better at cybersecurity. We're all interconnected. For example, you can't run a hospital without water. You can't do water without transportation and chemicals. You can't do any of it without energy and IT. So we
Right.
look at everything because a rising tide lifts all ships. So everything we
Mhm.
can do for everybody, we're going to do whatever we can. I don't care
Wow.
who you are. We have programs, we have information, we have things that we can do to help any organization of any size in any critical sector.
Wow. That is a pretty large mandate.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
when I
Mhm.
interviewed for this job, they always get to the end of the interview and they say, "Well, do you have any questions?" So I said, "Well, okay, what's the real job? I've read the PD, I've read the position description, we've talked,
Mhm.
but what's the real job?" And the person who became my boss said, "Secure the state of Iowa." Okay, that's what I'm trying to do.
The entire state. Wow. That's
Why
awesome.
not?
Why not? Do
Okay.
all states have regional advisors?
Yes, every state in the country has at least one and usually two cybersecurity advisors. One of those cybersecurity advisors is designated as the state cybersecurity coordinator. I'm the state cybersecurity coordinator for the state of Iowa, and that primarily means that I have an additional focus on election security. So I work with the Iowa Secretary of State's office, but every state has two, some even have more. But we have two here in Iowa. There's myself, pretty much based out of Des Moines, Iowa, and then we have another one called Shad Roberts, who's based out of Dubuque, who's very smart. He's much smarter than I am, but I think I'm better looking, so it works out.
Can't have it all.
No, sure can't.
So, with it being an election year, what are some threats that you're focused on for election security?
I think probably our biggest concern at this point is misinformation and disinformation. This is one of the areas where we see artificial intelligence and generative AI could play a role. Modifying media has been around forever. There was a famous photograph of Stalin walking along a riverbank with a friend of his or a cohort, and then he fell out of favor. That person fell out of favor, so they retouched the photo to show just Stalin walking by himself. Now, that was a very long time ago. So this is not something new. It's been around for quite a while. The problem we see is that it's going to become more convincing. So they're going to, there's
Right.
still going to be people out there that are going to try to put fake news stories out and things like that. But the problem with generative AI is that it sounds more convincing. It looks more convincing. Like I tell people to watch out for phishing, I said, look, Chat GPT does not make grammatical errors. So you can't just look at the text of the email and go, oh, that's phishing.
Right.
Okay, there's
It's
still
not
going to
that
be some
easy
of that.
anymore.
It's not going to be as easy. So basically what we see is the same things we've always seen, just better, I guess, would be a
Yeah.
better way to look at it.
Right. On that note, trying to defend against it, we have to get better in terms of
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's our job, right?
Yeah, indeed. For our audience, a lot of them are navigating the challenges of CMMC and in
Right.
the research higher ed space. What support does CISA provide for higher education? Are they considered critical infrastructure?
Absolutely. They fall under the realm, if you will, of government facilities because they're supported by governments at the state level or local level or even the federal level.
Okay.
Almost all of our resources are available. Now, I will say that we don't have, or I don't have, pride of ownership on our resources. And what I mean by that is that there are lots of organizations out there besides CISA that provide a ton of free resources in cybersecurity. And if there's a resource out there that an academic institution can take advantage of, and I'm aware of it, I'm going to tell them about it. I want them to go for
Okay.
that. One of the primary ones, I think, is the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, or the MSISAC. If you are
Okay.
a nonprofit or a government organization of any size, they have a ton of great technical resources available for you, malicious domain blocking, and there's a range. So what we
Right.
can offer to higher education, first off, and I've worked with Iowa State University, Dr. Doug Johnson up there a couple of times. What we can offer is, first off, our services are available to anybody. So if they're reaching out to their stakeholders, then we have services that are available to them. And of course, we have services that are available to a university if they want. We have technical services, we can do assessments, we have a ton of reading material, a lot of PDFs on our website. You could go down that rabbit hole for a long time. But the bottom line is we want to tailor what we offer to the organization, whether it's an academic organization or, a small grocery store. We tailor our offerings to that individual organization. We don't want to give them too much. We don't want to give them too little. We want to
Right.
give them the right assessments, the right information, the right assistance specifically for that size and what that sector is.
I think that's great because we all know that there's no one size fits all when it comes to
Absolutely not.
organizations. And I like the fact that you are going to tailor that to the organization, in this case, the
Yep.
university, and then
Mhm.
also make sure you're not overwhelming them with just too
True.
much stuff, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed when you, like I say, go down that rabbit hole with cybersecurity. It's no shortage of
Yep.
materials to read and training, but you really
No.
kind of want to prioritize.
Yes, and that's exactly what we do. There are 327 school districts in the state of Iowa. There's
Wow.
99 counties, and a lot of those organizations are they're very small, they're very rural, and they may
Right.
have one full-time or one part-time person doing their IT. That's a whole different that gives a whole different set of resources that we bring to them. If instead of talking to one of the huge, multinational insurance company, of which we have several in Iowa, or a university
Mhm.
which is large and has staff, we want to make sure that the information we give them is actionable. It's cool to know that oh, hey, we've got all this cool stuff, but if it's not
Mhm.
actionable information, it's not going to get done, and it really doesn't help.
Exactly. Yeah, it can do more harm than good.
Absolutely.
Actionable. That's the word of the day, huh? Or the theme of this interview. I love it.
Yes, sir.
So, Jim, you have, let's say, security professionals at universities.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're feeling overwhelmed. They're like, "Oh, wow, I love what Jim's talking about. These free resources that CISA is providing." What would be that first step for them to reach out to CISA to get assistance?
Send me an email. That's the
Okay.
simplest way. So the way it
Yeah.
happens, I mean, a lot of people are nervous. I won't say nervous. They may be slightly hesitant. Oh, we don't want to talk to the feds, and that's fine. I don't want to talk to them either, and I work for them. So the way this works is that we have basically a three-step process. So the first one is you get a hold of me. We set up a Teams call. Very simple, maybe 45 minutes, right? 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how the conversation goes. And we just talk. We sit there and I tell them about some of the things CISA has. They tell me about their organization, how large is it? How do you have dedicated cybersecurity people? Are you using an MSP or are you outsourcing? Just to kind of get a feel of it. So after that's the first step. We call it a CPV, a cybersecurity protective visit. Then the next step
Okay.
is I want to make this very clear up front. Everything that I do, that CISA does, is completely voluntary. It is completely no cost. You've already paid for it with your taxes, and it is completely non-regulatory. All right. So
Okay.
after we have this initial visit, I encourage them to sign up for our external vulnerability scanning. And to get a little geeky here, the bottom line is the organization sends a list of externally facing IP addresses to CISA. CISA will go ahead and run an Nmap against those particular IP addresses to see which services respond. And then they will run a Nessus Pro scan against those services on those IP addresses. And they run it once a week, and they run it every week until you tell them to stop. We call it our cyber hygiene. I encourage people to sign up for that. And then the second step to phase 2 is we have a very simple assessment called a CPG, a Cybersecurity Performance Goals. It's 38 practices, and what it does is it gives us a little kind of a feel of where they're at in a cybersecurity maturity model, right? We ask them to fill that out. And then once we have them signed up for SciHi, we have a good idea because of our interview and our CPG assessment. Then we can look at it and say, okay, what are some of the advanced things we can do for you? Are you ready to have an external penetration test? Are you ready to have an internal penetration test? We have a range of assessments we can do depending on the size of the organization. The CPG may be all that a small county or a small school district or a small business, maybe that's all they can deal with right now. They want to get those 38 basic practices. If I go to a multinational corporation, I've got another assessment that's 299 questions long. It takes 6 to 8 hours. Last thing I want to mention on our assessments is they are completely interview based. There's no evidence sharing, there's no evidentiary process to it. If you tell me you've got 15 character passwords, I'm not going to say, hey, show me the GPO. I'm not going to do that. It's just a matter of us sitting. No, it's not an audit. It's not an inspection. It's not a test. It's just a way for us and for you to find out maybe there's some things that you haven't thought of. Maybe there's some things that fell through the cracks. Maybe there's some things you can get better on. I'm sure there's probably things that you're great at. Okay, but it helps you focus a little bit more in on where to spend your limited resources, because everybody's resources are limited. So that's what I got.
Wow, that's a lot that you have.
That's a lot. That's why you send me it. That's why you call me up and I send you a big long email with lots of links and lots of information. And it's all free. It's all voluntary. I'm here to help. Let me help.
Best part is once you've done your work and you improve their cyber hygiene, they're not going to receive an invoice from CISA.
Absolutely not. And speaking of that, we have had fraudulent people try to fax invoices for our services.
Wow.
And they're like, I thought this was free. And I'm like, it is. Send me a copy of the fax. We're going to report it up, turn it into law enforcement. This was not us.
Doesn't surprise me, though. Criminals will always find a way to try to.
Oh, yes, sir, they do.
Well, you gave an extensive list of resources that CISA provides. Talk to us about things that CISA does not provide, especially in the context of CMMC.
Okay, one of the things we do not provide in the context of CMMC, we don't do audits. Okay, so if you want to have CMMC audit done, we can't come in there and say our audit is officially recognized by the Department of Defense or somebody else. Okay, we don't do audits, we do assessments. If that assessment is good enough for somebody, okay, but that's not in our control. Okay, so we are not an accrediting authority, I guess would be a good way to put it. The second thing is, if you have a bad day, and I want to emphasize this one, if you have a bad day, in other words, you get hacked or something, and you call me, I'm going to notify the FBI, I'm going to notify our headquarters and things like that. I am not legally allowed to come and fix your system, even though I may know how, and I may go, oh, isolate and eradicate. Come on, you know the drill, do it. I can't tell you that, okay? Because if I were to tell you that, now I've incurred governmental liability for anything that happens from then on. So I can't fix your system, okay? If you come to me after you've been hacked, it's kind of too late. You should have come to me beforehand. Maybe I could have helped you prevent that from happening. I will say, though, the other thing that we do have, we have a tool called the CSET, which is the Cybersecurity Evaluation Toolkit. Now, this is free. It's downloadable. Just search CISA space CSET, and you will find links to it. It's on GitHub. We have our own channel on GitHub. It includes a lot of assessments. It includes all of our assessments, but it also includes the CMMC version 2 assessment. Okay, so these are things that you can take yourself in the privacy of your own home, the way they used to say that, and nobody else has to see it. Okay, so you can kind of do a pre-assessment or a self-inspection using our toolkit. It also has a ton of resources built into it. So if you need templates, if you need, an acceptable use policy, if you need things like that, there's a ton of resources built in there. So that's what we can offer you is here's this CSET thing. We can do assessments, but we're not an accrediting authority. Generally, if you're working on CMMC, you're also working on a lot of other cybersecurity fronts. So let us help where we can.
Makes a lot of sense. And to really highlight that, a lot of the resources you all provide are preventative, being proactive.
Yes, we say we work left of bang. Okay, we
Mhm.
do on the prevention and the preparedness side of it. That's where we do most of our work. Now, if you have a bad day and you recover out of it eventually, you're back up and
Right.
running again, give us a call. We can sit down with you and say, okay, how did your incident response plan go? Did things work the way they should? Were there things you could do better? Were there things that maybe you could do a little help? We have tabletop exercises. We can walk you through that.
Wow.
So there's a lot of things there's a lot of support resources that we have available for you.
That's great. I was just about, you read my mind. I was going to ask the CISA help facilitate tabletop exercises.
Oh my gosh, yes. Basically a couple of different ways. And we can go anywhere from, one small organization. We run the nationwide tabletop the vote. What we do is first off, we have a website with probably 50 some different canned tabletop exercises covering a wide variety of scenarios, both cyber and physical, that you can just download and punch, go through, edit out the questions you don't want to ask, maybe put some in, mess with the injects. You can download these and run them yourself, no problem. Second level is you get a hold of in Iowa, either myself or Shad Roberts, and we can go ahead and we can come and facilitate them at your organization. I've done several of these around the state of Iowa. If you give us enough lead time, we have a dedicated team to do tabletop exercises out of our Kansas City office. They will come to your organization and facilitate the tabletop exercise for you. They'll take all the notes, they'll generate the after action reports, the whole bit. So we love tabletop exercises. They're one of the most effective methods out there for improving an organization's cybersecurity resilience. So we got a lot of them. We can help. We can help.
Certainly, I recommend listeners to take you up on that offer because that's an invaluable resource there. And you and I both know being in the military where we did a lot of training and preparation to go to war because
Absolutely.
you don't want to wait until you get on the battlefield to try to figure out what you're supposed to be doing.
That is very true.
So what type of organizations wouldn't qualify for something like that in terms of y'all helping with their facilitate their tabletop exercises?
Let me explain a little bit about what we consider critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure, there are 16 sectors. They were defined by presidential directive. They pretty much map to the FEMA critical infrastructure as well. But the bottom line is, like I said, I don't care who you are. I can always help somebody. All right. If you fall into one of those critical infrastructures, and you can just Google CISA critical infrastructure, and there'll be 16 different categories. But the bottom line is I've never run into anybody that I can't help, and I have never requested assistance from higher up in my chain to help an organization that's been turned down. Like I said, a rising tide lifts all ships, all right? So I will help any organization that is trying to get better at cyber resilience, okay? That's just the bottom line. I use the critical infrastructure as a way to, when I report up what I do for a living, I'll put in which critical infrastructure does this organization fall into. I'll put that in there, but everything is tied to everything. It's just the way it is now.
When we're talking about CMMC, defense contractors, I'm sure you can find a category that they will fall into.
Well, defense contractors, we have entire category. First off, there's critical manufacturing, and then there's also the defense industrial base. Okay. So yeah, absolutely no problem with anybody who wants to do business with the government. We're big on that. We like supply chain security.
Secure that supply chain. In terms of higher ed, K through 12, they've been hit over the last couple of years pretty hard by ransomware and a lot of different other cyber attacks. When you're looking at that threat landscape, what are some preventative things that you would recommend that higher ed and K through 12 institutions do to make them more resilient?
Well, it's really the basics, okay? I mean, if you do the basics, you're pretty much good to go. Multi-factor authentication is probably the biggest thing that you could possibly do. Like I tell people, if Godzilla shows up and wants to step on you, he's probably going to step on you, okay? So the idea is don't be where he's going to step.
Right.
Stretch that analogy about as far as it could possibly go. But the bottom line is do the basics, do the multi-factor authentication, do the strong passwords, keep your software updated, okay? And especially in these smaller school districts, know what you have. Do that asset inventory. One of the things that we see, but in some of these smaller schools, is what we call shadow IT. And what shadow IT is are things that people bring into the organization, but they don't tell the IT people about. We see this with more frequency in small schools than anywhere else. A teacher will say, hey, this is an awesome tool. I want this, I want this for my students. And they go ahead and they set it up or make it available to their students, or they start using it, but they may not have a maintenance contract. They may not know what the vulnerabilities are unless they tell their IT people. So that's really kind of a big concern. But the basics like multi-factor authentication, strong passwords, updating your software, those are the keys. If you can do those consistently and reliably, then you're no longer the low-hanging fruit, and that's where you want to be.
Yeah, totally agree. You don't want to be a soft target. And
No. You don't want to be the unlocked car in the, in the parking lot at 2 a.m. You want to be nice and locked up and let the thief go find somebody else, right?
Right. So a lot of these cyber criminals, they are looking for that low hanging fruit, just crimes opportunity.
Absolutely.
I think organizations sometimes get overwhelmed because they feel like they just have to get everything right and advance with their cybersecurity protections. And to your point, it's just a matter of getting the basics right. That'll get you 75% of the way there.
Absolutely. It's real easy to go down the rabbit hole and be looking at all the really cool, neat stuff. But hey, your basic tool is your asset inventory. If you don't have your asset inventory lined up, it's just going to leave holes for you. The other thing that we're starting to focus on more is operational technology as opposed to information technology. Operational technology, by our definition, is things that either monitor or control the physical environment. Okay, for example, your camera systems, security cameras are operational technology. Your your badge readers on your doors are operational technology. The furnace in your building is operational technology. So what we're seeing is that it used to be kind of security by obfuscation. Nobody knew how to run these things. I mean, if you were an IT hacker, you could break into a web server, and maybe you could get into the operational technology network, but now what? It's a completely different world. Well, now that technology is available. That knowledge is available on the dark web. So we're seeing more and more concern on our part with bad actors getting into the operational technology side of things. For example, where your furnace technician logs in remotely to check on the status of your furnace, right? They're coming in over the internet. So there's a mix between the IT and the OT now. There's a convergence in there that really needs to be addressed. So we're keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, for good reason. It's like everything you purchase now has internet access. I just purchased a garage door opener motor and it has internet access. The refrigerator.
I bought a stove that texts me when it needs to be cleaned. I'm like, my God, what did I marry you? Come on, what are you doing here?
Jeez. A to-do list for the stuff.
but the point is, it's all interconnected now. It's not separate anymore. So you can't just say, well, I'm going to protect all my computers. Well, are you protecting your mobile devices, your phones? Are those being protected? Is your Wi-Fi protected? So it's not just the desktop or your laptop that needs to be protected. You have to take a more holistic view of the entire landscape, of the entire threat picture, and then again assign those resources smartly based on the basics.
Absolutely. Going back to what you said, kind of start to the asset inventory and because you
Yep,
can't protect what you don't know you have. Those
that is true.
organizations with the shadow IT and assets they don't know that they have, of course, there are
Yep,
going to be gaps because
yep,
those are blind
absolutely.
spots. In terms of just being enthusiasts of IT, what are some emerging technology that excites you?
Well, I'm a little past the gee, looky what I can do phase, but I will say that the things that I think are really, really cool coming down the road. AI has been around for a very long time, artificial intelligence. It's been through several phases from expert systems back in the 90s all the way up through what we're getting now with generative AI. I think the potential for that to help people is just amazing. Okay, yeah, there's downsides.
Right.
People are going to use any technology for no good purposes. If there's always going to be that element, right? But I think artificial intelligence is going to be a huge boon to mankind. Especially as the democratization of it gets more and more to where the price points are coming down, the cost is coming down, the performance is getting better. So that's one thing that really excites me. The other one is quantum computing. I think that's going
Hmm.
to be an absolute seismic shift in the way things can work. Now, I know there's going to be some downside of it because, for example, the public key infrastructure, two-way encryption is going to get broke pretty fast, right? Well,
Right.
we'll come up with better ways to do it then. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Right.
But I think having that level of computing power, there's going to be new devices and new things coming up. And the last one, which is kind of what I'm waiting for, virtual reality. Or I should say augmented
Okay.
reality. This has been around again for a while where you put on a special pair of glasses and you and
Right.
somebody else can both see the same physical object. So, for example, you could be wiring a light switch and have someone, an electrician, watching you and telling you what to do next. I think that mixture of reality, but I think a non-obtrusive mixture of virtual and physical reality is going to literally change the world. I'm very excited about the next 20 years or 10 or
Yeah.
5 actually.
Yes, rapidly moving. It's
Rapidly
really
moving.
exciting.
Yep.
What are your thoughts of organizations using BYOD, especially in the context of the universities allowing BYOD?
I don't think you have a choice. People expect it. It's one of those things. I was working with a security researcher, let's say, on iPhones and vulnerabilities in iPhones and Android devices. And he said most people are never, ever more than 5 feet away from their phone. It is just a part of
Right.
them now. Okay. And they get so much information over that. I think it's going to be exceptionally difficult to try to maintain a separation. Here's your school stuff. Here's your personal stuff. I just don't see that as a feasible way forward. I think it's going to happen with the exception of certain very high security enclaves, like the top, like a SCIF or something like that. It probably won't ever happen in. But as far as open public stuff or anything that would be covered under CMMC, CUI information, I think BYOD
Right.
is just the way it's going to be. And you're going to have to come up with a way to deal with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. 'Cause we see even with the Army National Guard, they're piloting a BYOD program for their reservists. They're using a certain software, I think it's called Hyperi, where it kind of is
Mhm.
containerized and streaming.
Yep.
It's a matter of taking what you have and these are the circumstances and how do we secure it? That's going to
Yep.
be the focus.
Absolutely agree.
Good point.
Absolutely.
Now we know that educational institutions, they have a lot of compliance and regulatory requirements. You think about
Yep.
APA, FERPA, CMMC, the long list. What role do you think that plays in cybersecurity and helping them mature their posture? Or do you think it's a good thing or it's kind of more a burdensome?
I think it is what it is. On the positive side of it, all of those programs that you mentioned, they all basically say you have to do cybersecurity. They have different focuses, different, whether you're talking children's information or you're talking standard CUI or you're talking whatever it is, but they all focus on getting you better at cybersecurity, or you have to be at a certain cybersecurity level. So from that aspect, it's good. Now the downside is, of course, it's a regulatory burden, and everything costs money. Okay, so you're putting
Right.
resources into this that maybe you could be putting resources into something else. I understand that, and it's not my place to say is that good or bad. I look at the good side of it, and the good side of it is these are things that are good for cybersecurity resilience, regardless of why you're doing them. The fact that you're doing
Right.
them is a good thing. So that's kind of the way I look at that kind of regulatory compliance. CIRCIA is a law that was passed in 2022, and the final administrative rules have not come down. You mentioned regulation, not me. But the bottom line is, when the rules come down, what it's going to do is it's going to say, hey, if you are a covered entity, and that's not been fully defined yet, and you have a significant cyber event, again, not fully defined, you have to report it to the government within 72 hours. Now, there's already a lot of things like that. Okay, there, with the SEC rule most recently, right? So this is something that's not going to be new, but it's probably going to expand out to other areas. The good thing about CIRCIA is that I, as a cybersecurity advisor, if we at CISA learn about activity that your organization may not know about, like you're being targeted or you had a data breach and you don't know it, then I will contact you. I or somebody else, we will get a hold of you and let you know. One of the reasons I want to get the word out about CISA is that if you don't know who I am and I call you up and I'm like, hi, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Oh, and by the way, you're about to be hacked, but I can't send you an email. We don't want to let the bad guys know. So give me your personal email address. That's kind of a rough cold call to make. So if I can get the word out and they know who I am, then they can look at me and go, hey, yes, I should take this call. But the CIRCIA regulation is going to be out, probably final rules, we're guessing, because it's, the government, we're guessing end of this year, early next year.
I'm glad you brought that up, because you and I both know as cybersecurity professionals that happens a lot, where organizations, they either are breached and don't know it, or they're on the verge of going to be breached. I guess at a high level, obviously you can't say as far as how y'all gather that intel, but tell us more about how that comes about, or how frequently you see that happen where organizations are either already breached or knowing that they are the target or in the crosshairs of hackers.
Well, we have teams of people that scour the dark web on a continuous basis looking for data dumps. They're keeping an eye on telegraphs. They're keeping an eye on known cybersecurity actors, right? So sometimes they'll go ahead and they'll say, hey, look at this. We got this going on. Okay, you might let these people know. The other way, surprisingly enough, is another 3-letter out there somewhere. We'll be doing an investigation and it'll just come up as, oh, by the way, we also found this. Elkhorn, Iowa, am not told the source of those information. It's just trusted third party, right? That's pretty much what I get. But I know that we have teams that are searching the web. I know that cybercrime is usually tied into other crimes as well. Ancillary information from a different investigation. That's how we get our stuff right now. And we're looking all the time for vulnerabilities everywhere on the web, as much as we can.
Right. Sounds like this is a great partner to have, to essentially have the organization's back, those eyes and ears.
We're here for you.
Indeed. So I hope the listeners by now are convinced that certainly want to contact Jim. He can help you.
Well, if you're in Iowa, contact Jim. Search for Cybersecurity Advisors, CISA.gov. You'll find us. Okay. We're here. We're here to help. We have no other job. This is what we do for a living, and you just got to ask. We're right here. Just ask. We're willing to help. We're able to do constructive things. We're able to help you out. We're able to give you actionable information that can make you better for free. Give me a call. Give us a call.
Beat that. Well, Jim, clearly you have a passion for service and just
I do.
Helping people. So it's reassuring, and I believe the tax dollars are well spent with CISA and the resources y'all are providing. Appreciate you spending time with us today. You want to leave the listeners with anything? Any last words before I let you get back to protecting critical infrastructure?
Contact your local cybersecurity advisor. We're here strictly only to help you, and we're pretty good at what we do. So take advantage of it.
Well, thanks, Jim. I really appreciate your time today. And anyone I know in Iowa, I'll send them your way.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
If you receive value from this episode, I invite you to subscribe and like so that you're the first to know when we release new episodes. Also, check out cmmcproof.com to learn more about the arsenal of resources that we provide to equip you to conquer CMMC. We'll see you next time.